It's hard to imagine children committing such heinous crimes, but unfortunately, it's a reality we must face. These cases will shock and disturb you, but they also highlight the importance of identifying and addressing mental health issues in young people. If you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest videos. Now let's dive into the stories of these 10 dangerous kids and their sentences to life in prison. 1. Cameron Herron. Cameron Herron was involved in a tragic traffic accident in 2018 that resulted in the death of a mother and her daughter. At the time of the accident, Herron was only 18 years old and was driving a Ford Mustang that had been gifted to him as a reward for graduating from high school. As a result of the accident, he was charged with 2 counts of vehicular manslaughter and faced a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison.
The court's going to adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence him to 9 years in Florida State Prison.
After a trial, Herron was found guilty of both counts of vehicular manslaughter and was sentenced to a 24-year jail term by a state appeals court. The sentence came as a shock to many, including Herron's attorney, who is currently evaluating their options and considering appealing the sentence. The case has received significant attention from both the media and the public due to the severity of the sentence and Herron's young age at the time of the accident.
Jen and Keith, good evening. The victim's family members spoke about how what happens on Bayshore Boulevard has and will continue to haunt them. They told the judge they wanted the maximum sentence of 30 years. Let's show you that.
Some have argued that the punishment was too harsh, while others have pointed out the devastating impact that the accident had on the victim's family and the need for justice to be served. Regardless of one's position on the matter, the case of Cameron Herron serves as a sobering reminder of the grave consequences that can result from reckless or negligent driving. It also highlights the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions and the potential long-term consequences of poor decision-making. 2. Samantha Grigg. Samantha Grigg, an 18-year-old student, was recently sentenced to 4 years in prison for her role in the death of Dustin Frock. Frock was a fellow musician who was killed during an unarmed robbery in which Grigg was the driver. Although Grigg pled guilty to manslaughter and unarmed robbery charges, she claimed that she had never intended to harm Frock.
Samantha Grigg is telling a judge she never intended to harm Frolka.
I would like to extend my deepest remorse to the family of the victim. He was a fellow musician. It really breaks my heart, and I wish I could take it back every day.
Despite her claims, the court found her guilty and sentenced her to 4 years in prison. The sentencing has sparked controversy and debate, with some arguing that Grigg's punishment is too harsh for her role in the crime. Others have argued that her sentence is appropriate given the severity of the crime and the loss of life that occurred. Regardless, Grigg's case serves as a tragic reminder of the dangers of involvement in criminal activity and the serious consequences that can result. 3. Brendan Haim and Tyrell Bernadette. Brendan Haim and Tyrell Bernadette were involved in a tragic accident that led to the death of Dustin Frock. According to reports, Haim and Bernadette severely beat Frock, who was then forced to jump out of a moving Ford Explorer. Frock sustained fatal injuries from the fall and later died in the hospital. The incident took place in 2017, and both Haim and Bernadette were charged with murder. The case went to trial, where evidence was presented against them, and after a lengthy legal process, they were found guilty of the crime. Haim and Bernadette were subsequently sentenced to prison for their role in the incident. The incident left a lasting impact on the families of all involved, and it serves as a tragic reminder of the devastating consequences that can result from violent actions. There are many more stories like this, so watch the video till the end. 4. Kyandria Cook. Kyandria Cook's case drew public attention for its use of a smartphone app to lure men into carjackings. Cook was accused of participating in the violent carjacking of multiple men in the Atlanta area in 2018 and was charged with carjacking and using a firearm in a crime of violence. In her trial, the prosecution argued that Cook and her accomplices used a dating app to entice their victims to meet up and then rob them at gunpoint. Initially, Cook was sentenced to 20 years in prison for her crimes, but her sentence was later reduced to 11 years due to her cooperation with the government in apprehending the alleged gunman in the case. Cook's mother's reaction to her daughter's sentence went viral as she was seen on camera screaming and crying in the courtroom.
Concurrent as to the first 2 counts.
The emotional outburst drew attention to the impact of Cook's actions on her family and raised questions about the fairness of the justice system. Cook's case also highlighted the use of technology in modern-day crimes and the potential dangers of using dating apps and other social media platforms. The case served as a warning to others about the risks of meeting up with strangers online and the importance of staying vigilant in today's digital age. 5. Fernando Salgado. Fernando Salgado's case made headlines when he was arraigned on sexual assault charges and sobbed uncontrollably in court. The 18-year-old California student was accused of sexually assaulting a minor while they were both attending a party. Salgado pleaded not guilty to the charges, but the judge set his bail at $300,000, which he was unable to pay. During the arraignment, Salgado broke down in tears and cried out for his family and friends to help him. His emotional outburst garnered attention on social media, with many people expressing sympathy for him. However, others criticized his behavior in court, saying that it showed a lack of accountability for his actions. The case remained in the public eye as Salgado's trial proceeded, with many people following the proceedings closely. Ultimately, Salgado was found guilty of sexual assault and was sentenced to several years in prison. The case served as a reminder of the devastating impact of sexual assault and the importance of holding perpetrators accountable for their actions. 6. Damon Kemp. The courtroom was in chaos when Damon Kemp appeared for his court hearing. The accused was arrested for a home invasion, but things took a grisly turn when he confessed to killing his friend. As soon as he entered the courtroom, Kemp's behavior became erratic, shouting and screaming as if he was in some kind of trance.
God! God! God!
To add to the tension, family members of the victim were present in the courtroom, and they did not hold back their anger towards Kemp. They yelled at him, calling him a monster, and demanded justice for their loved one. It was a heartbreaking scene, as emotions ran high and tears flowed freely. The judge tried to calm things down, but it seemed like nothing could contain the outburst of emotions in the courtroom. Kemp's confession had shaken everyone to the core, and the impact of his actions was all too real. It was a tragedy that would leave scars on everyone involved for a long time to come. As the hearing ended, Kemp was led out of the courtroom, still shouting and crying out for attention.
Folks in the gallery, you need to hold it down. God!
It was a reminder that the consequences of one's actions could be devastating, and the price of such reckless behavior could never be too high. 7. Conrad Schaefer. Conrad Schaefer, a former teenager, was given consecutive life sentences in jail for his involvement in a shooting that resulted in the deaths of 2 people. Schaefer, who was only 15 years old at the time of the incident, was the youngest of the perpetrators. The incident, which occurred in 2017, was a tragic and senseless act of violence that left the community in shock. Schaefer and his accomplices had gone to a home with the intention of robbing the occupants, but things quickly turned violent. The group began shooting at the people inside the home, resulting in the deaths of 2 individuals. After being arrested, Schaefer was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and faced the possibility of life in prison. During his trial, Schaefer claimed that he was coerced into participating in the crime by his older co-conspirators. However, the court found him guilty and sentenced him to consecutive life terms in prison. The sentence sparked debate and controversy, with some arguing that Schaefer was too young to fully understand the consequences of his actions and should have been given a lighter sentence. Others, however, believe that he deserved the punishment and that his age did not excuse his role in the murders. Regardless of the public opinion, Schaefer will now spend the rest of his life behind bars. The tragic incident serves as a reminder of the devastating consequences of violence and the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions. 8. Joshua Phillips. Joshua Phillips was only 14 years old when he murdered his 8-year-old neighbor and hid her body under his bed. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 9. Lionel Tate. Lionel Tate's story is one of the most controversial in the history of the American justice system. At the age of 12, Tate was convicted of the first-degree murder of 6-year-old Tiffany Unick, a family friend whom he was babysitting. Tate claimed that he was imitating professional wrestling moves on her, but the severity of his actions led to her death. Tate's trial garnered widespread attention and controversy, as many argued that he was too young to be held fully responsible for his actions. Despite this, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, making him the youngest person in modern history to receive such a sentence. However, in 2004, Tate's sentence was overturned by an appeals court and he was released on parole. The decision was based on the fact that Tate's trial was unfair due to the lack of adequate representation and the jury's failure to consider lesser charges. Since his release, Tate has continued to live a quiet life and has stayed out of the public eye. The case, however, remains a controversial one, as some believe that Tate's actions were heinous enough to warrant a life sentence, while others argue that his age at the time of the crime should have been taken into greater consideration. 10. Mary Bell. Mary Bell was born on May 26, 1957, in Newcastle upon Tyne, England. Her childhood was marked by abuse, neglect, and abandonment. She was often left alone, and her mother was a prostitute who was often absent. Bell's father was unknown, and her mother attempted to kill her several times when she was a baby. On May 25, 1968, Mary Bell, who was only 11 years old, strangled 4-year-old Martin Brown in a derelict house in Newcastle. Martin's body was found the next day, and his death was initially ruled an accident. However, a few months later, on July 31, 1968, Mary and her friend Norma Bell, no relation, strangled 3-year-old Brian Howe on a wasteland near their homes. The girls carved the letter M into Brian's stomach and mutilated his body. Mary later admitted to the killing, and both girls were arrested and charged with murder. During the trial, Mary's troubled childhood was revealed, and it was suggested that she had a personality disorder. The jury found Mary guilty of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility due to her age and troubled background. Mary was sentenced to an indefinite period of detention, which meant that she would remain in custody until she was deemed no longer a danger to society. Her sentence was later reduced to 12 years after a campaign by her supporters, who argued that she was not mentally responsible for her actions. After her release, Mary Bell's whereabouts were kept secret to protect her from public anger and harassment. She was given a new identity and began a new life under a different name. In 2003, Mary, who was now a mother and had changed her name again, was discovered by reporters and forced to flee her home. She later gave an interview in which she expressed remorse for her actions and said that she wished she could change the past. The case of Mary Bell remains one of the most shocking and disturbing cases in British criminal history. Her crimes, committed at such a young age, have fascinated and horrified the public for decades. Thanks for watching. We hope this video has helped shed light on these difficult issues and sparked important conversations about how we can prevent future tragedies. If you found this video informative, please consider subscribing to our channel for more thought-provoking content. Remember to always stay informed and stay engaged with the world around you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.